Hook. In the heart of a bustling city, two police officers stood on opposite sides of a grand jury room. The judge's bench was adorned with an elegant wooden frame and high-backed chairs, while the prosecutor sat at his desk with a steely gaze upon him. The prosecutor leaned forward, his voice thick with passion as he began to present evidence against one of the lead suspects, a young black man named Marcus Black. As the jury listened intently to the prosecution's case, they could see through the tension in Marcus' face and suspect that something was off. The judge made it clear from day one that this trial would be unique, not just for its unusual facts, but also because of the witness whose testimony played a crucial role. Marcus sat quietly at his desk as he studied the evidence presented by the prosecutor, each detail carefully scrutinized before being shared with the jury. The prosecution's case revolved around two separate incidents, one in which Marcus was walking home from work when he came across three black men following him on their way to a convenience store. He tried to evade them and stumbled upon them moments later, only for one of the men to pull out his gun. As Marcus tried to run away, another man stepped forward and shot at him, narrowly missing him but leaving behind a bullet that went through his head. The other two black men chased after the shooter until they came across a police officer on duty who happened to be standing nearby. Despite their best efforts, Marcus was struck by the officer's gun, causing him to lose consciousness. The trial began with the judge questioning the prosecution about the events leading up to the shooting and how it occurred. The prosecutor argued that these incidents were isolated occurrences and that they did not form a pattern or motive for violence against black people in the area. He also highlighted the police department's history of bias, which had led some officers to approach cases involving black individuals with suspicion. The defense team tried their best to present evidence that cast doubt on the prosecution's version of events. One witness, an elderly woman who lived next door to one of the suspects, testified about hearing a loud argument and seeing someone running towards Marcus' house before he was struck by the police officer. However, her testimony was contradicted when it came time for cross-examination. As the trial progressed, tensions grew high as both sides presented their arguments and evidence. The prosecutor seemed to be losing control of the case, with his passion becoming increasingly emotional and dramatic. Marcus' family members sat in front of him, tears streaming down their faces as they listened to the prosecution's charges. Just when it appeared that the jury would render a verdict, something unexpected happened. A witness who had been sitting nearby came forward and identified one of the suspects, not his friend or coworker, but someone he had never met before named George Washington Wilson. He claimed that on the night of the shooting, he saw Marcus walking to the convenience store while George was inside with two other black men. George's testimony seemed to be a crucial piece of evidence in unraveling the mystery surrounding the incident. The prosecution argued that this witness's account contradicted their previous statements and could potentially exonerate Marcus from the charges. However, George's sudden confession raised eyebrows among the jury members, who were now beginning to question the reliability of his testimony. As they deliberated for several hours, a decision was made. Marcus would be acquitted of all charges related to the shooting, while George Wilson was charged with attempted murder. The trial had become an intense and emotionally charged spectacle, leaving both sides feeling frustrated and disappointed. The moral twist in this story came when it was revealed that the real judge on the jury, a black woman named Elizabeth Jackson, played a crucial role in reaching her decision. According to George's testimony, he overheard Elizabeth discussing the shooting with another witness, who had also seen Marcus walking towards the convenience store during his time away from the station. Elizabeth knew what she was hearing and decided not to hear it for herself, choosing instead to believe that one of the black men involved in the incident committed the murder. This act demonstrated her commitment to upholding justice, regardless of any potential biases or prejudices that might have influenced her decision-making process. The trial serves as a reminder that even within a system filled with systemic inequalities and institutionalized racism, it is possible for individuals like Marcus Black to rise above their circumstances and fight against injustice. In this case, the jury's determination was based on evidence presented by multiple witnesses who had each seen different parts of the story unfold, from George Wilson's confession to Elizabeth Jackson's testimony. Ultimately, the trial served as a testament to the resilience and courage of individuals like Marcus Black who refused to be silenced or marginalized in pursuit of justice. It taught us that while progress may not always come easily, it is never too late for change, and that even when faced with overwhelming odds, we can stand up against injustice and fight for what's right. The end. Title: The Final. Upon a time, Elizabeth had been working at the local convenience store for several years when tragedy struck. It was early morning, and she arrived at work as usual, feeling refreshed, but also apprehensive about what lay ahead. As she walked towards her desk to begin the day's routine, she heard voices that didn't seem quite normal in this quiet neighborhood. As she turned around, a dark figure loomed over her, his eyes fixed on her with cold, calculated intent. Elizabeth recognized him as Marcus Black, one of several black men who had been involved in an incident at the convenience store last week. The attacker's voice was menacing, and Elizabeth could hear every syllable he spoke, each word carrying a weight that made her stomach clench. She knew she couldn't let this moment pass without taking action, but standing up to Marcus Black would put her in grave danger. Instead of reacting impulsively or trying to back away, Elizabeth decided to approach him with calm and determination. As they stood face to face, the attacker's gaze never wavered from hers, his eyes fixed on a spot just off the store's entrance. He spoke in a voice that was both menacing and smooth, as if he knew exactly what she would do. "I know who you are," Elizabeth said, her tone firm but measured. "And I'll be damned if it wasn't your actions that led to this tragedy." Marcus' eyes, his expression twisted into an expression of confusion. He didn't understand why Elizabeth was accusing him of the murder, and he felt a sense of anger and disbelief wash over him. "I never committed anything," Marcus said, trying to brush off her accusations with a weak defense. "I'm just doing my job, protecting people." Elizabeth shook his head, determination in her eyes. She knew that she couldn't let this chance go by without giving them a fight, no matter the cost. "You're lying," Elizabeth said, taking another step forward. "The evidence shows otherwise. The witnesses saw you walking towards George Wilson's car and pointing at something, just before Marcus Black entered. They didn't see anything else that night." Marcus' face fell, his eyes narrowing in confusion. He knew he had been caught off guard, but he couldn't deny the truth. "I'm sorry," he said, trying to regain control over himself. "I'll cooperate with you if it means doing so." Elizabeth nodded, a small smile spreading across her lips as she listened intently to Marcus' account of that fateful night. As they continued to discuss the evidence and witness statements, Elizabeth learned more about Marcus' past and his involvement in several other incidents around town. She discovered that he had been involved in conflicts with some local businesses over parking spaces and small differences in their policies, which ultimately led to a physical confrontation at the convenience store. Despite these conflicts, however, Elizabeth could see something redeeming in Marcus Black's character. He was willing to take responsibility for his actions and work towards making things right. She began to believe that he might not have committed the murder if it wasn't for a personal vendetta or some other underlying issue. As they sat down to discuss potential legal options, Elizabeth realized that she could use this case as an opportunity for change. With Marcus Black's cooperation, She would be able to present evidence and argue his innocence in court, potentially leading to a lesser sentence or even an acquittal if the jury found him guilty of not acting with proper care. But as T. Hay worked through her plans, Elizabeth began to realize that justice was not just about finding answers for those affected by crimes, but also working towards addressing the systemic issues that contributed to them. She knew that change would take time and effort, but she couldn't let this case go unaddressed. Finally, after months of preparation, it came to a crossroads. The trial began on a crisp autumn morning at the local courthouse, with Elizabeth standing before a full jury made up of people from all walks of life, including black and white citizens alike. As they listened to Marcus Black's account, her heart pounded in her chest as she prepared for what was likely to be an emotional and challenging moment. The trial itself was not without its ups and downs. There were moments when the prosecution failed to present sufficient evidence or arguments, leaving Elizabeth feeling frustrated and discouraged. But each time a witness stepped forward to speak their truth, it served as a reminder of the strength and resilience that lay within her community. As the hours ticked by, the jury's deliberations became more heated, with arguments over the reliability and credibility of witnesses, legal strategies, and potential alternative penalties. Elizabeth stood at the back of the room, taking in the intense atmosphere around her without losing sight of what she was fighting for. Finally, after a long and grueling day of testimony, it came time to deliver the final verdict. The jury found Marcus Black guilty of murder, but they also recommended that he be held accountable for his actions by way of community service and restitution. As Elizabeth stood at the back of the room, her heart pounding in her chest with pride and relief, she knew that she had won a battle against injustice, not just an individual case. But more importantly, she was proud to have played a role in bringing closure to the lives of those affected by this tragic incident and inspiring others to stand up for what's right. The end. Elizabeth stood at the front of a dimly lit courtroom, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The sun had set earlier that day, casting a golden glow over the room as she looked out at the jury's faces, each one filled with determination and anticipation. She could feel their eyes narrowing behind the thick frames, searching for any sign of weakness or manipulation. The case against Marcus Black was nothing short of daunting. It began on the night of his disappearance when he left a small apartment in downtown Chicago, never to return. His family had spent months tirelessly piecing together leads and gathering evidence, but they were still no closer to finding him than a foggy memory. As the trial progressed, Elizabeth watched as each witness stepped forward to share their accounts of what she saw on that fateful night. There was Detective Sarah, who claimed to have seen Black leaving the apartment at around 10 p.m. and catching sight of his car heading northbound. Another witness, a young woman named Emily Thompson, described seeing Black exit the building moments after her own arrival, holding a bloody knife in his hand. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Marcus' defense team argued that he was simply misunderstood or had experienced some sort of mental breakdown at the time. They claimed that he had been going through a difficult period with his recent breakup and that he may have been hallucinating when he made those statements. As Elizabeth listened to their arguments, she couldn't shake off the feeling of frustration and discouragement building within her. She knew that they were making progress towards justice, but it seemed like every step forward was met with another obstacle in its way. The jury's deliberations had become a tense affair, as lawyers and witnesses traded accusations and counter-accusations, each one hoping to prove their case. As the hours ticked by, Elizabeth found herself standing at the back of the room, her eyes fixed on the faces of those around her. She couldn't help but feel like she was being watched by some unseen force, keeping them all apart from one another and leaving her feeling isolated and alone. Finally, after a long and grueling day of testimony, it came time to deliver the final verdict. The jury announced their decision with a collective gasp as they read out Marcus Black's guilty verdict. Elizabeth let out a deep sigh, knowing that this was the end of what she had worked so hard for. But as the judge stepped down from the bench and handed over his instructions, something unexpected occurred. Instead of ordering Marcus to serve prison time or face fines, he received an alternative sentence: community service and restitution. For months now, Elizabeth had watched with bated breath as her client struggled with the consequences of his actions. Now, she knew that there was still much work to be done in order to bring closure to everyone affected by this tragic incident. As Marcus walked out of court, tears streaming down his face, he stumbled backward and fell to the ground. He looked up at Elizabeth, a grateful expression on his face as he realized what had just transpired. "I didn't deserve this," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything." Elizabeth stood over him, her hand resting on his shoulder as she took in the gravity of the situation. She knew that Marcus was struggling with personal demons and that it would take more than just community service to help him make amends. "I know this is not easy," Elizabeth said softly, "but we have a responsibility to do what's right, no matter how difficult the road ahead may be." As Marcus looked up at her again, he nodded in agreement. He knew that he had taken a step towards justice, but there was still much work to be done to bring closure and healing for those affected by this tragedy. And so, Elizabeth continued on with her mission of bringing closure to this case, one witness at a time. She remained committed to doing what's right, even when the odds were stacked against her, knowing that justice would always prevail in the end. In the dimly lit alleyway, Marcus walked with a heavy heart as he stumbled backward and fell to the ground. His face was etched with fear and disbelief as he looked up at Elizabeth, who stood over him, her hand resting on his shoulder as she took in the gravity of the situation. "What did you do?" he asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't deserve this." Elizabeth knew that Marcus was struggling with personal demons, deep-seated traumas, and guilt stemming from past actions that had caused harm to others. She could sense the pain and regret on his face, as if everything he had done in life up until that moment had led him here. "I'm sorry for everything," he repeated softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know this is not easy." Elizabeth knew that it would take more than just community service to help Marcus make amends. He needed the support of friends and family who could provide emotional guidance and practical assistance in addressing his personal struggles. "I understand," Elizabeth said softly, "but we have a responsibility to do what's right, no matter how difficult the road ahead may be." As Marcus looked up at her again, he nodded in agreement. He knew that he had taken a step towards justice, but there was still much work to be done to bring closure and healing for those affected by this tragedy. "I have been through so many hardships," Marcus began softly. "My father died when I was just 15 years old, leaving behind a broken family and a sense of emptiness that continues to haunt me." He looked out at the empty alleyway, feeling the weight of his past weighing heavily on him. "You know what's even worse?" he continued softly. "I've been accused of killing my own mother." Elizabeth felt her heart skip a beat as she listened intently. She knew that it was a terrible and unforgivable crime, one that could easily be swept under the rug if not for Marcus' unwavering determination to seek justice. "I know," Elizabeth said softly, "but we have to believe in each other, Marcus." "Me too," Marcus replied softly. He looked at her with a determined gaze and a newfound sense of purpose. "I'm tired of living this lie. I want to be known for something more than just what happened that night in the alleyway." Elizabeth nodded understandingly as she placed a hand on his shoulder, supporting him in his journey towards healing. "We have to start by gathering evidence," Elizabeth said softly. She knew that Marcus would need help from other witnesses who could provide crucial information about the crime and its aftermath. Over the next few days, Elizabeth led a team of volunteers through the alleyway, interviewing anyone who had seen or heard anything suspicious on the night of the murder. They collected eyewitness accounts, photographs, and videos of the area that evening, hoping to uncover any clues that could lead them closer to the truth. As they worked, Elizabeth couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness for Marcus' loss and frustration at the injustice he had faced in his life. But she knew that it was not just about him. It was also about justice and healing for those who were affected by this tragedy. "We need to find closure," Elizabeth said softly, her voice barely above a whisper as they continued their search. For Marcus, for his family, and for the community at large. And so, with hope in her heart and determination in her hand, Elizabeth continued on her mission of bringing justice to the case, one witness at a time. She remained committed to doing what's right, even when the odds were stacked against her, knowing that justice would always prevail in the end. In the end, it was not just about finding the killer. It was also about healing and rebuilding lives that had been shattered by tragedy. Elizabeth's unwavering commitment to justice and compassion helped to bring closure and healing for those affected by this case. And she knew that her work as a YouTube video host would never truly be over until all of them were free from the pain and trauma they had experienced. In the heart of a small town, there lived a man named Marcus whose life was marked by tragedy. He had lost his parents in a car accident that claimed their lives, leaving him and his younger brother to navigate life alone without any formal education or job prospects. As he grew up, Marcus became determined to make a difference in the world around him. His passion for justice and helping others led him to become an advocate for criminal justice reform, fighting against unjust laws and policies that disproportionately affected communities of color. But despite his dedication, Marcus faced injustice at every turn. He was falsely accused of a crime he did not commit, resulting in years of imprisonment and a tarnished reputation. The pain and trauma he had experienced were immeasurable, but through it all, he remained unwaveringly committed to finding closure for himself and others. As Elizabeth sat across from him, her eyes searching his face with determination, she knew that they needed to continue their search for justice in the case of Marcus' death. She was determined not just to find the killer, but also to heal the community he had left behind and bring peace to those who would soon grieve. "I know it's going to be tough," Elizabeth said softly, her voice barely above a whisper as they continued their search for answers. "But we have to stay focused on what's important. For Marcus, his family, and this town." Elizabeth began by reviewing the evidence against Marcus, looking at each piece of information with fresh eyes in order to identify any inconsistencies or discrepancies that might be helpful in reaching a breakthrough. She also spoke with witnesses who had seen him before the accident, hoping to gather more insight into what happened that night. Despite her efforts, Elizabeth found it difficult to find concrete leads that would lead them straight to the killer's identity. The case was complex and multifaceted, involving multiple factors such as motive, evidence, and witness testimony. But she remained persistent in her pursuit of justice, knowing that every small piece of information they uncovered could be crucial to bringing closure for Marcus' family and community. As the weeks went by, Elizabeth continued to work tirelessly, spending countless hours interviewing witnesses, analyzing evidence, and combing through social media posts related to the case. She knew that time was running out, as more and more people were grieving the loss of their loved ones in this small town. Despite her struggles, Elizabeth refused to give up hope. She remained committed to doing what's right, even when it seemed like all odds were against them. With each passing day, she grew closer to understanding the events leading up to Marcus' death and how they had contributed to his tragic fate. One night, as Elizabeth sat in her living room, watching a news report about another shooting that occurred nearby, she couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness for Marcus' loss. She knew firsthand how much he loved this town and the people who lived here, and losing him would be an unbearable blow to them all. But at the same time, Elizabeth also felt a deep sense of frustration with the injustice she had faced in her life. As someone who dedicated their career to fighting for criminal justice reform, she knew that there were still countless systems and policies in place that perpetuated systemic racism and discrimination against people from marginalized communities. She remembered Marcus' experience as an example of how these injustices could take hold and have devastating consequences. He had been falsely accused of a crime he did not commit, resulting in years of imprisonment and a tarnished reputation. The pain and trauma he had experienced were immeasurable, but through it all, he remained unwaveringly committed to finding closure for himself and others. As Elizabeth sat there, feeling the weight of her emotions on top of everything else that was going on around her, she knew that the journey towards justice would be long and challenging. But with each new piece of evidence or witness testimony, she felt a sense of determination to keep pushing forward until they finally found closure for Marcus' family and community. In conclusion, Elizabeth's unwavering commitment to finding justice in the case of Marcus' death was fueled by her deep passion for helping others and standing up against injustice. Despite facing numerous obstacles along the way, including false accusations, difficult evidence, and a complex investigation, she remained determined to uncover the truth and bring closure to those affected. As Elizabeth continued her search for answers, she knew that justice would never truly be over until all of them were free from the pain and trauma they had experienced. But with each step forward, she also felt a sense of hope that one day, their journey towards healing and rebuilding could take on new meaning as they worked to create a brighter future for everyone in this small town. And so, with a heavy heart but filled with determination, Elizabeth continued her search for closure and justice, knowing that the fight against injustice was far from over. On a crisp autumn morning, Elizabeth lay in bed, staring at the familiar ceiling. She had spent months on this case, poring over every piece of evidence and interviewing witnesses who claimed to have seen Marcus alive moments before his tragic death. It was a complex investigation that involved multiple departments and agencies from different jurisdictions, each with their own set of rules and protocols for handling cases like hers. As she sat in her office, surrounded by the cluttered shelves filled with files, photographs, and physical evidence, Elizabeth couldn't shake off the feeling of déjà vu. She had seen this scene countless times before. A young man's life cut short at an early age due to unforeseen circumstances that could never be fully explained. But there was something different about this particular case. The victim, Marcus, was unlike any other he had ever known. He was kind, gentle, and always seemed to have a twinkle in his eye when talking about the people he cared about. Despite being taken from her by someone without cause or explanation, Elizabeth felt a deep sense of sadness for him and his loved ones. Over time, she discovered that Marcus' death had been caused not by an external force, but rather by a complex web of circumstances and emotions. It was clear to her that the victim's life had been cut short due to a combination of factors, including financial instability, personal struggles with mental health, and deep-rooted issues related to trauma. As she delved deeper into Marcus' case, Elizabeth began to uncover more evidence than any other investigator in town could have ever imagined. She interviewed witnesses who claimed to have seen him alive moments before his death, each of whom had a unique story to tell about their encounter with the victim. Some were frightened and traumatized by what they saw, while others remained steadfast in their belief that Marcus was simply out on some kind of adventure. Elizabeth also discovered that there were multiple suspects who could potentially be responsible for Marcus' murder. Each one seemed plausible at first, but as she dug deeper into each detail, it became clear that the truth might not always lay in straightforward lines of logic or evidence. One person everyone had heard about was a local businessman named Jack, who had been seen arguing with Marcus on their last evening together before his death. Elizabeth spent weeks interviewing Jack and piecing together a timeline of NTS leading up to Marcus' murder. She discovered that Jack had recently lost a major business deal due to the victim's involvement in some suspicious activities, which may have led him to feel angry and desperate. Another suspect was a former employee at Marcus' company who had been fired for embezzlement just weeks before his death. Elizabeth uncovered evidence linking her ex-husband, David, to several financial transactions with the victim that were suspiciously large in size and amount. She also discovered that David had previously made accusations of sexual misconduct against another employee, which may have led him to seek revenge. As Elizabeth continued her investigation, she faced numerous obstacles along the way. False accusations from witnesses who had changed their story at crucial moments, complicated evidence that was difficult to interpret or analyze, and even a complex web of red flags within Marcus' own organization made it nearly impossible for her to uncover the truth. But despite all this, Elizabeth remained steadfast in her commitment to justice. She refused to give up on Marcus' family and community, knowing that their pain and suffering were too great to bear any longer without closure. With each passing day, she felt a growing sense of determination to bring those responsible for his death to justice, no matter the cost. It wasn't until months later when Elizabeth finally received an anonymous tip from someone who claimed to have seen Marcus alive moments before his death that her search for answers took on new meaning. The tip led her to meet with a witness who had been living in fear of retribution and told her about a secret meeting they had arranged behind closed doors, where they discussed the possibility of reconciliation. At first, Elizabeth was skeptical, but as she delved deeper into this mysterious encounter, she discovered that it turned out to be nothing more than an elaborate plot by one of the suspects involved in Marcus' murder. The witness had been a pawn in David's scheme, and he had stumbled upon evidence linking him to several other criminals who were involved in their own criminal activities. With this revelation, Elizabeth was able to gather enough information to bring all 4 suspects to justice. She arrested Jack for embezzlement, David for sexual misconduct, and the ex-employee for his role in a larger scheme of fraud against Marcus' company. The trio stood trial together, each facing multiple charges that would result in severe consequences if they were found guilty. As Elizabeth sat behind bars, watching her fellow defendants plead their cases before an all-white jury, she couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing that justice had been served for those who had lost everything due to Marcus' death. She knew that this was just the beginning of what could be a long and difficult road towards healing and rebuilding in the small town. But as Elizabeth walked out of court, she felt a renewed sense of hope that one day, their journey towards recovery would take on new meaning. They had proven themselves capable of overcoming even the most daunting challenges, and with each step forward, they were closer to creating a brighter future for everyone in this community. And so, with a heavy heart but filled with determination, Elizabeth continued her search for closure and justice, knowing that the fight against injustice was far from over. She knew that it would take time, patience, and hard work, but she also had a deep sense of purpose driving her forward towards creating a safer, more compassionate community for all. In the small town of Millfield, Nestled in a valley surrounded by rolling hills and lush forests, there lived a family known for their unwavering dedication to justice. The Zarakuri household was led by Patriarch Thomas, an ardent advocate for community policing and social responsibility. He had instilled these values into his children from a young age, teaching them the importance of standing up against injustice and serving their fellow townspeople. One day, tragedy struck when Marcus, a beloved member of the town's tight-knit family, was killed in a suspicious accident while out on a bike ride with Elizabeth. The entire community was devastated by his sudden loss, and the investigation into what had occurred led to multiple charges against several individuals who were initially cleared of any involvement. As the trial approached, each defendant stood before an all-white jury, their faces stern but lined with determination as they outlined their defense. Thomas sat at the front row, holding onto his wife's hand tightly, watching his children file in and taking notes on the witnesses' testimonies. Elizabeth felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that justice had been served for those who had lost everything due to Marcus' death. As the trial progressed, it became clear that each defendant was facing multiple charges, including murder, embezzlement, and witness tampering. The prosecution's case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, pointing to several individuals as suspects in the crime. However, Elizabeth knew that justice would not be served without a solid defense. Despite the mounting pressure from the prosecution, Thomas remained steadfast in his belief that Marcus was innocent. He spent countless hours studying the evidence and speaking with witnesses who had seen him interacting with Marcus before his death. Through these conversations, he pieced together a complex narrative of events that shed light on possible motives for the murder. As the trial neared its end, the jury deliberated for days, weighing the evidence against each defendant's alibis and personal history. The townspeople held their breath as they listened to the arguments from both sides, hoping to find some weakness in the prosecution's case that could sway them towards a guilty verdict. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of counting down the minutes, the jury reached a split decision. One member ruled not guilty, while another declared guilty on all counts. The crowd erupted into chaos as Thomas and Elizabeth waited anxiously for the outcome. As soon as it was announced that Marcus had been cleared of murder charges, the entire town erupted in applause. Tears streamed down Elizabeth's face as she realized that justice had finally come for him. She knew that this would not be an easy road ahead, but with each step forward, they were closer to healing and rebuilding their community. In the weeks following Marcus' death, the Zarakuri household struggled to move on from their loss. Thomas worked tirelessly behind the scenes, leading a team of volunteers who provided support for those affected by his passing. He also began to advocate for changes in local laws and policies that would ensure more accountability in cases involving crime and violence. Elizabeth continued her search for justice, using her platform as a YouTube channel to share their story with the world. She shared videos detailing Marcus' life and the circumstances surrounding his death, highlighting the importance of community policing and social responsibility in keeping our communities safe. Through these videos, Elizabeth exposed instances of police brutality, corruption, and lack of accountability that had plagued Millfield for years. Her message resonated deeply with her audience, inspiring them to stand up against injustice and demand change in their own communities. As word spread about the Zarakuri household's advocacy work, other townspeople began to take notice, inspired by Elizabeth's bravery and determination. They joined forces with Thomas and his team in pushing for reforms that would ensure more transparency and accountability in police departments across the country. Their efforts paid off when the Department of Justice announced a new investigation into Millfield's policing practices, resulting in several significant changes and improvements to local law enforcement agencies. The Zara Kuri household had become an unlikely hero, but their message was one that inspired countless others to stand up for what they believed in. In the end, Marcus' death became a turning point for the town of Millfield. It reminded them of the importance of community policing, social responsibility, and standing against injustice. And with each new challenge, Elizabeth continued her journey towards healing and rebuilding their community, knowing that justice would not be served without all hands on deck. As they stood trial together in court once again, each defendant faced multiple charges, but this time, there was no room for doubt or ambiguity. With Thomas's unwavering conviction and the support of their fellow townspeople, Elizabeth's story became a testament to the power of justice, inspiring countless others to fight against injustice and create a safer, more compassionate community. And so as EY walked out of court that day, Elizabeth felt a renewed sense of hope that one day, their journey towards recovery would take on new meaning. They had proven themselves capable of overcoming even the most daunting challenges, and with each step forward, they were closer to creating a brighter future for everyone in this community. And so, as they continued their search for closure and justice, Elizabeth knew that there was still much work to be done. But she also felt a deep sense of purpose driving her forward towards creating a safer, more compassionate community for all. She had shown the world that even in the face of adversity, it is possible to stand up for what they believe in and fight against injustice with unwavering determination and resilience. And so, as she walked out into the sunset, Elizabeth felt both satisfaction and hope, knowing that justice would always be served, one step at a time. The sun had just set over the small town of Millfield, casting a warm glow on the streets and houses below. The air was crisp and clean, with only the occasional breeze rustling through leaves and carrying the scent of freshly baked bread. Elizabeth stood at the center of the square, surrounded by her fellow townspeople as she awaited their verdict in the case against Thomas for the theft of an expensive antique vase from a local museum. Thomas had always been a quiet man, known for his love of art and history. He had worked tirelessly to preserve the ancient artifacts that were displayed on display at the museum, but when he discovered the vase was missing, he knew it must have been stolen by someone with far more resources than him. Elizabeth watched as Thomas's expression darkened as they stepped forward to present their case before the judge. The evidence presented in court consisted of a detailed inventory of all items recovered from the scene and a witness statement describing how Thomas had seen the vase being carried out of the museum during its theft. The prosecution argued that Thomas was not only an accomplice, but he also committed murder by using his expertise to create a believable alibi for himself. As the judge listened intently to the evidence, Elizabeth's heart pounded in her chest as she realized just how close they were getting to bringing justice to Thomas and their community. She knew that this case was not over yet, but with every passing day, she felt more confident that the truth would be revealed. Despite his conviction, Thomas remained stoic throughout the trial. He spoke calmly and matter-of-fact as he outlined his reasons for taking the vase, explaining how it had sentimental value to him and how he had been struggling financially ever since its theft. Elizabeth listened intently, feeling a sense of empathy towards this man who had lost everything so easily. As Thomas's testimony drew to a close, the judge called upon the jury to deliberate on his guilt or innocence. For several long minutes, the jurors sat silently in their seats, processing the evidence and weighing the pros and cons of each case. Finally, one member stood up and declared that they had found Thomas guilty. The crowd erupted into applause as Elizabeth watched with bated breath as Thomas was led away by a group of police officers. She couldn't help but feel proud of him for standing up to injustice and fighting for what he believed in, even when it seemed like everything else in his life was falling apart. As she stood there, surrounded by her fellow townspeople, Elizabeth knew that this case had just begun. There would be more trials, challenges, and perhaps even more danger involved. But with Thomas's conviction behind them, they were better equipped to face whatever the future held. For months after his trial, Elizabeth continued to work tirelessly in pursuit of justice for Thomas and their community. She met with witnesses who had been impacted by the theft and worked on creating a plan to prevent similar incidents from happening again. The townspeople also rallied around her efforts, offering support and resources to help them rebuild their lives after such a traumatic event. Together, they formed a task force tasked with improving security at the museum and working towards preventing further crimes like this. As Elizabeth sat in her office, surrounded by stacks of documents and sketches, she felt both satisfaction and hope as she reflected on what had just happened. She knew that justice would always be served, any step at a time. And for Thomas, who was finally able to find closure and begin the process of rebuilding his life, it was a triumph. As she closed her eyes, Elizabeth whispered a small prayer, grateful for the opportunity to make a difference in someone's world and knowing that their journey towards recovery would never truly end. Elizabeth had always been drawn to the mysteries of the town she called home. As a child, her father would take her on walks through the streets and point out old buildings with stories etched onto their facades. It was in those early days that Elizabeth discovered something special about Thomas, the museum curator who had disappeared from the museum hours before his trial. Thomas was known for his passion for history and his ability to bring it alive for visitors of all ages. He had spent years curating a vast collection of artifacts, including rare paintings, sculptures, and scientific experiments. But when Elizabeth discovered that Thomas had stolen pieces from the museum, she knew immediately that something sinister was at play. As months passed after his trial, Elizabeth continued to work tirelessly in pursuit of justice for Thomas and their community. She met with witnesses who had been impacted by the theft, talking about the emotional trauma they felt as a result of losing valuable artifacts. They shared stories of how the stolen pieces had adorned their homes and added a unique charm to the town's cultural scene. Elizabeth also worked on creating a plan to prevent similar incidents from happening again. She spent countless hours brainstorming ideas with local law enforcement agencies, community leaders, and museum staff. Together, they developed a security system that would include increased surveillance cameras, better locks, and more secure storage areas for the stolen artifacts. The townspeople were equally supportive of Elizabeth's efforts. They rallied around her, offering their time and resources to help rebuild their lives after such a traumatic event. The library became a central gathering place where people could come together to discuss security measures, share information about new developments in museum preservation, and offer support for Thomas and his family. As the weeks turned into months, Elizabeth began to feel a sense of satisfaction knowing that her work was making a difference. She watched as the security system took shape, with additional cameras being installed in strategic locations around the town. The locks on the doors were strengthened, and storage areas were rearranged to better protect the precious artifacts. But despite these efforts, there remained one obstacle standing between Elizabeth and justice. Thomas had not been found or charged for his crimes. This raised concerns among the townspeople about whether they would ever see a real change in their security measures. Despite this setback, Elizabeth refused to give up hope. She knew that time was of the essence when it came to solving such complex cases. With her network and local connections, She began to dig deeper into Thomas's past, looking for clues that could lead him back to his activities. Through a series of interviews with former colleagues and friends, Elizabeth uncovered inconsistencies in Thomas's testimony during trial. He had claimed to have been asleep when the theft occurred, but there were witness accounts indicating otherwise. Additionally, he had altered his story to avoid accountability, claiming not to know where or who the stolen pieces came from. As she dug deeper, Elizabeth discovered a web of lies and deceit that threatened to derail their efforts at justice. She confronted Thomas directly in a heated exchange, demanding answers about what happened to those precious artifacts. But despite her best efforts, Thomas was uncooperative, blaming anyone but himself for his actions. Elizabeth knew that she had been pushed too far when it came to holding Tom accountable for his crimes. But with the support of their community and newfound allies in law enforcement agencies, they were determined to bring him to justice. After months of investigation and negotiations, a breakthrough occurred. A detective from the local police department recognized Thomas's patterns of behavior during trial and had previously been involved in similar cases. He reached out to Elizabeth, offering his assistance in tracking down Thomas and bringing him to justice. With this new information, Elizabeth began working with the detective to develop a plan for apprehending Thomas. They collaborated on surveillance footage from key locations around town, searching for any suspicious behavior that could be related to the stolen artifacts. As they worked tirelessly behind the scenes, Elizabeth's determination never wavered. She knew that justice was not only about solving the theft, but also about healing and rebuilding a community ravaged by tragedy. Finally, after weeks of intense investigation, Thomas was arrested and charged with his crimes. He faced numerous charges, including fraudulently claiming to possess stolen artifacts when he had not done so. When Elizabeth returned to the museum one day, she found it transformed into a place where visitors could come to learn about history while also acknowledging its importance in their community. The security system was now even more robust, with increased camera coverage and better lock systems. Thomas stood trial once again, this time facing charges for theft of historical artifacts from his own organization. As Elizabeth watched him face the judge, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride knowing that her hard work had paid off in bringing Thomas to justice. In the end, the stolen artifacts were returned to their rightful place in the museum's collection, and the town emerged stronger than ever before. The community celebrated this triumph as evidence of the power of collective action and the importance of perseverance in the face of adversity. For Elizabeth and her team, it was a lesson in justice that would stay with them long after Thomas's trial had concluded. They knew that their work wasn't over yet, but they also felt confident that they had made a difference in someone's world, one stolen artifact at a time. In a small town nestled in the heart of the countryside, there lived an ordinary man named Thomas. He was born and raised in the community, with his parents being hard-working farmers who instilled in him a love for history from a young age. As he grew older, Thomas began to notice that certain artifacts were missing or misplaced from various historical sites throughout town. It started small enough, a few books here and there, some coins tucked away somewhere. But as the incidents piled up, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. One fateful day, while walking through an old oak tree in the park, Thomas stumbled upon what appeared to be a hidden compartment deep within its bark. As he opened it, he was met with an array of unfamiliar items, ancient coins, rare documents, and even some strange artifacts that seemed out of place in his familiar surroundings. Thomas quickly realized that these objects were no ordinary finds, but rather stolen pieces from the town's own museum, a cherished institution where visitors could learn about the history of their community while also recognizing its significance. The security system had been upgraded to include even more cameras and lock systems, making it nearly impossible for anyone to steal any further artifacts without being caught. As Thomas sat in his jail cell once again, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride knowing that his hard work had paid off. His community was now aware of the importance of historical preservation and the value of their collective memories. The town's museum was no longer just a place for learning about history. It was also a space where visitors could come together to discuss these stories, share insights, and celebrate the past. On his release from prison, Thomas returned to the museum with renewed determination to return all stolen artifacts back to their rightful places within its collection. He knew that the community would be skeptical at first, but he refused to let fear stop him. As soon as Elizabeth arrived at the museum one day, she saw a different place altogether, one where visitors could come learn about history while also acknowledging its role in shaping the town's identity. The security system had been vastly improved since Thomas's trial, and there was increased camera coverage throughout the building to capture every detail of any suspicious activity. The lock systems were even more robust than before, ensuring that only authorized personnel could access the exhibits and sensitive areas. As Elizabeth watched him face the judge in his prison cell once again, she couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for Thomas's determination. As he stood trial on, he again, this time facing charges for theft of historical artifacts from his own organization, Thomas knew that there was no turning back now. He had been caught red-handed, and it would not be easy to make amends with the museum's staff or visitors. However, Elizabeth remained hopeful that justice could still prevail. As she listened intently as Thomas stood before the judge, Elizabeth couldn't help but feel a surge of pride in her friend's resilience. She knew firsthand how difficult it was for individuals like Thomas to overcome adversity and take on seemingly insurmountable challenges. But here he was, standing at the end of his sentence, ready to face the consequences that came with such actions. In the end, justice triumphed as the stolen artifacts were returned to their rightful place in the museum's collection. The town erupted into a celebration, with residents and visitors alike coming together to recognize this historic achievement. As Thomas stood tall in front of the crowd, he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing that his hard work had paid off. For Elizabeth and her team at the museum, it was not just about returning artifacts. It was also about creating a safe space for people to come together and learn from one another. They knew that their mission was far from over, but they were confident in their ability to continue preserving history while inspiring community members to take action against injustice. Thomas's trial had taught them the importance of perseverance, courage, and collective responsibility when it came to protecting our shared heritage. And for Elizabeth, that lesson would stay with her long after Thomas's sentence was concluded. She knew that even as she continued to work in museums around the world, their mission of preserving history would never fade. In the end, Thomas's story served not only as a reminder of the power and importance of historical artifacts, but also as an inspiration for individuals who strive towards justice and making a positive impact on society. For Elizabeth and her team at the museum, it was a lesson in perseverance that would stay with them long after Thomas's trial had concluded, one stolen artifact at a time, serving as a testament to their unwavering commitment to preserving history and inspiring community members to take action against injustice. The end. In the dimly lit corridors of the city's historic library, a group gathered around Thomas, an aging detective with a sharp eye for detail and a deep understanding of criminal history. His face was etched with that seemed to tell tales of years spent on the trail, but his heart remained unwavering in his pursuit of justice. Thomas had returned home after completing a high-profile case involving a stolen artifact from the ancient city's museum. The artifact, known as the Lost Treasure, had been discovered during an excavation conducted by Thomas's team back in 1925, and its significance was undeniable. It was believed to hold immense historical value that spanned centuries. As the group listened intently to Thomas's account of the case, they couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. They knew that their mission was far from over as they delved deeper into the history of the artifact's discovery and its potential significance for future generations. They had been tasked with identifying the thief responsible and bringing them to justice, but there were also concerns about preserving the delicate balance between historical preservation and social progress. Thomas's trial had taught them a valuable lesson in perseverance, courage, and collective responsibility when it came to protecting our shared heritage. The case began when Thomas received a tip from an anonymous source regarding the stolen artifact's location after years of being lost on various expeditions led by different teams of investigators. He immediately assembled his team, including Elizabeth, one of their most talented archivists, and Zara Du Bois, a skilled detective with experience in solving complex cases. As they made their way to the excavation site where the lost treasure was believed to have been discovered, Thomas could feel the palpable tension among the group as they searched for clues that might lead them to the thief. The air was thick with the scent of dirt and decay, and the sound of rustling leaves in the distance added to the eerie atmosphere. As they approached the excavation site, Thomas led his team rough a series of narrow passageways, each one more challenging than the last. They encountered a group of workers who were busy digging up ancient artifacts, but their actions raised alarms as it appeared that someone had tampered with the tools and equipment used during the original excavation. Despite the danger they faced, Thomas remained resolute in his pursuit of justice. He knew that they needed to act quickly before any further damage was done to the artifact or its significance could be lost forever. As he made their way through the maze-like tunnels, Thomas scanned the area for signs of a thief, searching for clues that might lead them to the criminal. Finally, after hours of exhaustive search, they found themselves face to face with the culprit, an elderly man named Zara Du Bois, who had been responsible for stealing the artifact years ago. Zara Du Bois denied any involvement in the theft, but was unable to explain how he managed to cover his tracks and evade justice for so long. As they confronted Zara Du Bois, Thomas realized that their investigation would not be an easy one. The thief's motive for looting the museum was shrouded in mystery, and there were no concrete leads or witnesses who could provide crucial information about his identity or whereabouts. However, Thomas remained determined to bring him to justice, regardless of the risks they posed. As he spoke with Zara Du Bois, Elizabeth began to piece together a timeline that detailed how the thief had approached the museum during one of their expeditions in 1925 and made off with the artifact before leaving without any trace. She discovered that the thief was aware of Thomas's expertise in historical artifacts and had decided to target him because he had been leading an investigation into a different case involving stolen artifacts from another ancient city. Despite his past, Zara Du Bois had become disillusioned with organized crime and had turned down offers to work for other criminal organizations as he believed they were more interested in profit than justice. However, when the thief's demands became too high, he found himself enticed by the prospect of a bigger payout than he could ever imagine. As Thomas confronted Zara Du Bois about his involvement in the theft, Elizabeth revealed that she had discovered Zara Du Bois's secret past and was aware of some of his unethical activities before they worked together on this case. She also provided him with evidence linking him to other cases where stolen artifacts from ancient cities were involved, implicating him as a key figure in an organized crime ring. In a moment of clarity, Zara Du Bois realized the error of his ways and confessed to Thomas that he had been working for the thief all along. trying to profit off their illegal activities while ignoring the historical significance and value of the artifact. He admitted that his greed and ambition blinded him from the consequences of his actions and led him down a dark path. In the end, justice was served as Zara Dubois's trial concluded with a guilty verdict. The lost treasure remained safely locked away in its museum exhibit, but it also served as a reminder to those who sought to profit off history for their own gain, that there are consequences to our actions and that we must act with integrity and respect towards the past. Thomas's story had not only brought closure to his investigation into the theft of the artifact, but also inspired others to take action against injustice. He showed them the power of perseverance in the face of adversity, courage in standing up for what is right, and collective responsibility when it comes to preserving our shared heritage. For Elizabeth and her team at the museum, Thomas's story was not just about uncovering a stolen artifact, but also about teaching future generations that history is more than just facts on paper. It's an invaluable source of knowledge and inspiration. The lost treasure became not only a tangible reminder of their mission to preserve historical artifacts, but also a beacon of hope for those who seek to make a positive impact on society. For Elizabeth, the trial had left a lasting impression that would stay with her long after Thomas's sentence was concluded. She knew that they were never done in the fight against injustice, and that every stolen artifact could be brought back from the shadows, serving as a testament to their unwavering commitment to preserving history while inspiring community members to take action against discrimination and inequality. In conclusion, Thomas's trial had not only served as justice for the thief, but also as an inspiration for individuals who strive towards making a positive impact on society. It was a lesson in perseverance, courage, and collective responsibility when it comes to protecting our shared heritage and preserving history for future generations. The lost treasure became more than just a stolen artifact. It was a symbol of hope and the power of education and community engagement in shaping a better world for all. For Elizabeth and her team at the museum, Thomas's story remains etched in their hearts as they continue to safeguard historical artifacts while also inspiring others to take action against injustice. They knew that the road ahead would not be without its challenges, but with each stolen artifact brought back from the shadows, they had proven once again that history is more than just facts on paper. It's a living, breathing force of change that can make a profound impact on our collective future. As the sun set over the small town of Millfield, Elizabeth and her team at the local museum stood nervously outside their office. The last act of a year-long investigation had ended in one of the most significant thefts they'd ever witnessed. An ancient artifact was stolen from the museum's collection. Thomas, a renowned archaeologist who worked for the museum's research department, was among those arrested and charged with the crime. The discovery of the missing artifact shook the town to its core. It had been discovered during a routine excavation in nearby fields when Elizabeth's team stumbled upon an ancient tablet hidden beneath layers of dirt and debris. The tablet contained not only historical information but also personal details about Thomas, including his family background, early life experiences, and passion for uncovering lost artifacts. The community was divided by the news. Some believed that the theft had been accidental or a result of greed, while others saw it as an act of justice to bring attention to issues of discrimination and inequality in their town. Elizabeth knew that Thomas's trial would be one of the biggest events in Millfield's history, not just for the artifact itself, but also for its significance as a symbol of hope and progress. As the day arrived, Elizabeth stood before the small gathering at the town hall, addressing everyone with an inspiring speech. Thomas, We stand here today to acknowledge your innocence and the bravery it took to expose this heinous crime against our community," she said. "Your dedication to preserving history and inspiring others is a testament to not only your talent as an archaeologist, but also to your unwavering commitment to justice." The crowd erupted in applause, their hearts filled with admiration for Thomas's courage and conviction. But the highlight of Elizabeth's speech was when she spoke about how the artifact would be brought back from its hiding place, serving as a testament to his unwavering dedication to preserving history, while also inspiring community members to take action against discrimination and inequality. "I understand that you may have been targeted for your beliefs," Elizabeth continued. "But I assure you, Thomas, each stolen artifact could serve as a reminder of our shared heritage and the power of education and community engagement in shaping a better world for all." The crowd nodded slowly, their minds brimming with newfound understanding about history, racism, and social justice issues. They knew that this was not just an archaeological mystery, but a call to action towards creating a more inclusive society. Elizabeth then presented her vision for how Thomas's trial would serve as an inspiration for individuals who strive towards making a positive impact on society. She spoke of the importance of recognizing past injustices, learning from them, and using it as a foundation for building a brighter future. She encouraged people to challenge stereotypes, listen to marginalized voices, and work together to create meaningful change. Thomas's story serves as an example that history is more than just facts on paper. It's a living, breathing force of change that can make a profound impact on our collective future, Elizabeth declared. "Through your trial, we have the opportunity to not only bring back the stolen artifact, but also inspire others to take action against injustice." The crowd erupted into cheers as they realized the significance of Thomas's story and its potential for inspiring positive changes in their community. They knew that his trial was a turning point towards justice, equality, and unity, and they were eager to join hands with Elizabeth and her team at the museum to continue this important journey. In conclusion, Thomas's trial had not only served as justice for the thief, but also as an inspiration for individuals who strive towards making a positive impact on society. It was a lesson in perseverance, courage, and collective responsibility when it comes to protecting our shared heritage and preserving history for future generations. The lost treasure became more than just a stolen artifact. It was a symbol of hope and the power of education and community engagement in shaping a better world for all. For Elizabeth and her team at the museum, Thomas's story remains etched in their hearts as they continue to safeguard historical artifacts while also inspiring others to take action against injustice. They knew that the road ahead would not be without its challenges, but with each stolen artifact brought back from the shadows, they had proven once again that history is more than just facts on paper. It's a living, breathing force of change that can make a profound impact on our collective future. As they looked forward to Thomas's trial and the positive changes it could bring about for their community, Elizabeth knew that the journey towards justice was only just begun, but with the power of shared history and education, anything is possible. /I'm_ending. For the thief, the thrill of the hunt was a constant adrenaline rush that fueled his relentless pursuit of the lost treasure. It had been centuries since this ancient artifact had resurfaced in its own lost world, and as he made his way through the dense forests and treacherous caves that surrounded it, his heart pounded with anticipation. Every rustling leaf or creaking branch was a potential danger lurking just beyond the edge of visibility, but the thrill of the chase kept him alive. As he delved deeper into the cave system, Elizabeth's team worked tirelessly to locate the stolen artifact and bring it back safely. They had spent months studying historical documents and analyzing ancient texts that led them to believe that the lost treasure was once a powerful weapon used by an elite warrior group during a great war of empires. The artifacts were believed to possess incredible abilities, such as invincibility and healing powers, which could potentially change the course of history. As they continued their search, Elizabeth's team encountered various challenges that threatened not only their mission, but also their own lives. They faced treacherous terrain, dangerous predators lurking in the shadows, and volatile weather conditions that tested their physical capabilities and endurance. But they persevered, driven by an unwavering determination to uncover the truth about the lost treasure and bring it back home. One particularly challenging moment came when Elizabeth's team stumbled upon an ancient artifact hidden deep within a hidden chamber beneath one of the caves in the heart of the forest. The artifact was unlike anything they had ever seen before, crafted from a rare gemstone that glowed with a mesmerizing blue light. Its intricate design and unique properties raised suspicions among their colleagues, but Elizabeth knew she had to take matters into her own hands. She carefully extracted the gemstone from its socket and studied it closely under a microscope, marveling at its strange properties and potential powers. She then returned to her team with the precious stone and explained the significance of this artifact in the context of the lost treasure. The group was initially skeptical, but soon began to see the truth behind Elizabeth's words. The gemstone possessed incredible healing abilities that could potentially cure any illness or injury, allowing its users to live longer and healthier lives. It also had the power to generate intense magical energy fields that protected it from harm and powerful forces against those who sought to use it for malicious purposes. The artifact was not just a treasure, but a symbol of hope and the collective responsibility for preserving history. As Elizabeth's team worked tirelessly on developing new methods to harness the powers of the gemstone, they discovered that the artifact required an incredibly rare resource called Nebula Stone, which was extracted from another hidden cave deep within the forest. The Nebula Stone had a unique composition that allowed it to absorb and store magical energy, making it essential for the artifact's full potential. The team worked together to locate additional sources of Nebula Stone in order to obtain sufficient quantities to power the gemstone fully. They faced numerous obstacles along the way, including rival treasure hunters who sought to claim ownership of the artifact and harsh weather conditions that tested their physical abilities and endurance. Despite these challenges, Elizabeth's team persevered, determined to bring back the lost treasure and harness its powers for the greater good. They continued to work tirelessly in the hidden caves, extracting Nebula Stone from various sources, refining their methods, and testing out potential applications of the artifact. One day, after months of hard work and dedication, they finally succeeded in obtaining sufficient quantities of Nebula Stone that were enough to power the gemstone fully. As the team prepared to return home with its newfound powers, a powerful storm brewed outside, casting shadows over their makeshift campsite and threatening to destroy everything they had worked for. Elizabeth knew that they could not risk returning without the artifact in hand. They quickly gathered all of their belongings and set out into the dark night, determined to overcome any obstacles that stood in their way. The storm raged on as they trekked through dense forests, dodging lightning bolts and battling fierce winds. But despite the danger, Elizabeth's team remained focused and united. As they neared a small village nestled deep within the forest, they heard a faint cry for help coming from one of their fellow treasure hunters who had fallen victim to the storm. The group quickly sprang into action, racing towards the stranded hunter while avoiding the violent winds that threatened to tear them apart. Upon arriving at the village, Elizabeth's team found the hunter injured and frantically calling out for help. They worked together to tend to his injuries, using their newfound abilities to heal him rapidly and provide any necessary medical attention. As he recovered from his ordeal, the hunter shared with Elizabeth the story of how he had stumbled upon the lost treasure while searching for a rare mineral that was essential for building weapons and armor. He explained that the artifact had been lost in its own hidden world for centuries, waiting to be rediscovered by someone like Elizabeth's team who possessed the knowledge and expertise necessary to harness its power. The hunter's words left a lasting impression on Elizabeth, reminding her of the importance of preserving history and heritage while also inspiring others to take action against injustice. She knew that they could not simply focus on finding the artifact, but must work together with communities around the world to share their newfound knowledge and resources and create a better future for all. With the lost treasure safely returned home, Elizabeth's team had completed another mission of bravery and accomplishment. They had proven once again that history is more than just facts on paper. It is a living, breathing force that can make profound impacts on our collective future. As they looked forward to Thomas's trial and the positive changes it could bring about for their community, Elizabeth knew that the journey towards justice was only just begun. But with the power of shared history and education, anything is possible. For as long as she stood before her mirror every day, Elizabeth reflected on the incredible journey she had led herself through to uncover the lost treasure and harness its powers. She knew that it would never truly end, as there was always more treasure out there waiting for someone like her who possessed the knowledge and courage necessary to unlock its secrets. But no matter how many stolen artifacts or lost treasures they encountered along their journey, Elizabeth's team remained steadfast in their commitment to protecting history and preserving heritage while inspiring others towards a brighter tomorrow. They knew that every small step forward was an achievement worth celebrating, as it marked another chapter in the incredible story of survival and discovery that had brought them all together. For the thief, the thrill of the hunt had been a constant adrenaline rush that fueled his relentless pursuit of the lost treasure. But for Elizabeth's team at the museum, Thomas's story remained etched in their hearts as they continued to safeguard historical artifacts while also inspiring others to take action against injustice. As they looked forward to Thomas's trial and the positive changes it could bring about for their community, Elizabeth knew that the journey towards justice was only just begun, but with the power of shared history and education, anything is possible. The lost treasure, a tale of survival, discovery, and the pursuit of knowledge. Elizabeth had always been a curious soul. From a young age, she was fascinated by history and adventure, searching for hidden treasures that would lead her to new worlds and unlock their secrets. As an adult, her passion only grew stronger when she discovered a mysterious artifact in a library that seemed to possess the power to grant any wish. The artifact had been stolen from the museum several years ago, but Elizabeth's team of archaeologists, historians, and treasure hunters were determined to track it down and recover it. They knew that the lost treasure was not just an ordinary piece of history. It held a powerful magic that could unlock ancient knowledge and inspire others to fight for justice. With each passing day, they delved deeper into the library's archives, piecing together clues about the artifact's origin and its journey through time. They uncovered documents describing a legendary treasure hoard that was said to have been hidden in an underground chamber deep beneath the city's walls. The team knew that this would be their biggest challenge yet, as they had to navigate treacherous terrain, cross dangerous obstacles, and confront powerful enemies who were determined to keep the lost treasure out of sight. As Elizabeth led her team on a perilous mission, she encountered countless challenges along the way. They battled fierce creatures lurking in the shadows, braved treacherous swamps, crossed raging rivers, and faced impossible odds at every turn. But each obstacle they overcame only served to build their resolve and strengthen their bond as a group. As Elizabeth led her team deeper into the library's underground chamber, she discovered an intricate system of tunnels that connected the various rooms within. The team had no idea what lay ahead, but they knew one thing for sure: they were not alone. In each room, they found clues to the artifact's location and a series of puzzles that required them to use their combined knowledge and skills to solve. At last, after hours of intense searching, Elizabeth led her team to a chamber filled with glittering jewels, ancient artifacts, and mysterious symbols. It was here that the lost treasure lay hidden in plain sight, a large golden chest locked away in the center of the room. Elizabeth knew that this would be their moment of triumph, but they also faced another challenge as they tried to unlock its secrets. The chest contained powerful magic that could grant great power and wealth, but it was also imbued with a dark side that threatened to consume them if not used correctly. Elizabeth had always been careful about the lost treasure, and knew that she must use her wits and bravery to harness its full potential while maintaining their sense of justice. With each step they took closer to unlocking the chest, Elizabeth's team grew more determined than ever before. They worked tirelessly, using every skill they possessed, from deciphering ancient symbols to navigating complex puzzles, all in an effort to unlock the treasure's secrets and secure it for future generations. But as they near the final solution, a powerful rival emerged who was equally determined to claim the lost treasure for themselves. This formidable opponent, known only as the Shadow Thieves, had infiltrated the museum years ago and was now using their expertise in theft and deception to try and sabotage Elizabeth's team's mission. The Shadow Thieves launched an attack on the chamber, sending shockwaves through the halls of the library. But Elizabeth and her team stood strong, utilizing their knowledge of history and strategy to outmaneuver the Shadow Thieves and protect the lost treasure. With a fierce battle raging within the chambers, Elizabeth knew that they could not afford to make any mistakes or let go of control. She used every skill she had honed over the years to outsmart the Shadow Thieves and unleash their own version of the artifact's power. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Elizabeth managed to unlock the chest and retrieve the lost treasure. As they stood triumphantly at the heart of the chamber, they looked back on a journey that had tested them both physically and mentally. But through it all, Elizabeth knew that she had done exactly what she set out to do, uncovering the true power of the artifact while inspiring others towards justice. The lost treasure was not just an ordinary piece of history. It was a powerful tool for discovery, knowledge, and empowerment. It was proof that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope and possibility. And with Elizabeth's team by their side, they continued to push forward, using the power of the artifact to make a positive impact on their community and inspire others towards a brighter tomorrow. For as long as the lost treasure remained hidden within the museum archives, it would continue to be a source of wonder and inspiration for generations to come. But one thing was certain: Elizabeth and her team had proven that even in the face of great danger and adversity, with determination, courage, and the power of knowledge at their fingertips, anything is possible. Hashtag Lost Treasure, hashtag History Discovery, hashtag Museum Pursuit, hashtag Justice for All. As the team stood triumphantly at the heart of a massive, centuries-old museum chamber, they could not help but feel an overwhelming sense of accomplishment and pride. The chest that had once been securely locked remained open to their inspection, its polished brass lid shining like new under the harsh light of the torches that illuminated their path. The team's journey began with a simple task: unlocking the chest in search of a long-lost artifact that held great significance within the museum archives. As they made their way through the dimly lit corridors and ancient artifacts, each step felt more weighty than before as they navigated treacherous passageways filled with secret rooms and hidden chambers. Despite the challenges they faced along the way, Elizabeth's resolve remained unyielding. She had always been drawn to history, particularly those that offered a glimpse into the past, yet held secrets within their very walls. And this particular chest was no exception. It contained something far more than just valuable historical artifacts. It was a powerful artifact with the potential to unlock untold knowledge and inspire others towards justice. As they approached the heart of the chamber, Elizabeth could feel an intense energy coursing through her veins. The air crackled with anticipation as she peered into the chest's ornate brass lid, ready for whatever lay hidden within its depths. With a sense of determination in their hearts, the team worked tirelessly to pry open the lid and reveal what was inside. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of fumbling and prying, the lid rose up from its hiding place with a jolt that sent shivers down Elizabeth's spine. Inside the chest lay not only valuable historical artifacts, but also something far more significant: a mysterious, glowing object known as the Lost Treasure. As they approached the artifact, their hearts raced with excitement and anticipation. They hesitated for just a moment before carefully removing it from its hiding place and setting it on a polished pedestal in the center of the chamber. The lost treasure was unlike anything they had ever seen before, a shimmering crystal ball that glowed brightly within a small dome-like structure. Its intricate design and swirling patterns mesmerized them, each one telling a unique story about an era long past. As Elizabeth watched as her team examined the artifact with a mixture of wonder and awe, she couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility to uncover its true purpose and share it with others. The lost treasure was not just something for their own curiosity. It had the potential to inspire people across generations, offering them guidance on how to use their power for good. With her team by their side, Elizabeth knew that they would continue to push forward, using the magic of the artifact to make a positive impact in their community and inspire others towards justice. They believed that even though there may be danger lurking just beyond the next turn or hidden behind every corner, with courage, determination, and knowledge at their fingertips, anything was possible. As they stood triumphantly once more, Elizabeth couldn't help but feel grateful for this incredible journey. She knew that the lost treasure had not only brought them closer to uncovering a long-lost artifact, but also provided them with an opportunity to inspire others towards justice while shining a light on the power of knowledge and wonder. For as long as they held on to their dreams, Elizabeth and her team would continue to unravel the mysteries of history together, using the magic of the lost treasure to unlock untold treasures hidden within the museum archives. And in doing so, they would ensure that future generations would be able to discover the power of knowledge and inspiration, just like they had done for themselves. Hashtag Lost Treasure, hashtag History Discovery, hashtag Museum Pursuit, hashtag Justice for All. Guidelines for using power for good with Elizabeth and her team. The team of three, a group known as the Lost Treasure, was not your average museum curator or archaeologist. They were unique individuals who possessed an innate ability to harness the power of magic that had been hidden within their community's collection since its inception, the Lost Treasure. With her expertise in ancient artifacts and knowledge about the history of the museum, Elizabeth knew firsthand the significance of preserving these treasures for future generations. As a leader in the organization, she recognized that each artifact held immense historical value and potential to make a positive impact on society. Elizabeth's team was not just enthusiasts. They were warriors who dedicated their lives towards uncovering the secrets behind the lost treasure. They had faced many challenges along the way, from unearthing ancient texts to deciphering cryptic inscriptions. But through it all, they remained steadfast in their mission of justice and knowledge. The artifact that had captured Elizabeth's attention was a rare stone discovered during an excavation on the outskirts of town. This gem, known as Euphoria, possessed incredible powers. Its touch could heal wounds, raise spirits, and grant wishes. As soon as Elizabeth stumbled upon Euphoria, she knew it held immense potential to revolutionize their community. With her team's expertise in magic and knowledge about history, they realized that Euphoria was not just a treasure, but also a symbol of hope and inspiration for those who sought justice. Euphoria's power grew stronger with each wish granted by its users, from restoring the health of an injured child to bringing back their lost loved ones. The team felt a sense of responsibility towards using this incredible tool responsibly, ensuring that only positive changes were made in their community. Elizabeth knew that they couldn't solve all the problems facing their town alone, but with Euphoria by their side, they had the power to make a significant impact. They began training others in magic and sharing stories about the lost treasure's significance within the museum archives. Their mission was not just about unlocking hidden treasures. It was also about spreading knowledge and inspiring people towards justice. Through workshops, lectures, and community events, Elizabeth and her team worked tirelessly to educate citizens on the power of magic and its potential for positive change. As their reputation grew, Elizabeth's team gained a newfound sense of purpose. They became known as the Lost, igniting a movement that inspired others to use their own unique abilities for good. From local schools to community centers, they began organizing events that showcased the power of magic and its ability to make a difference in society. Their journey was not without setbacks. There were instances where their wishes came at great cost or led to unintended consequences. However, these challenges only served as catalysts for growth and self-discovery. Through it all, Elizabeth's team remained committed to using Euphoria responsibly and ensuring that the community continued to benefit from its powers. The lost treasure had become a symbol of hope in their town, inspiring others to believe in the power of knowledge and wonder. They knew that with each artifact they uncovered, there was always an opportunity for positive change, one step